Thanks so much for visiting Low-Sal-Life. I'm Sarah, and today we are talking about why I went on a low-salicylate diet and how I ended up finding out that I was allergic to fruits and veggies. So this is one of those things, like, did you know that you've been allergic to these foods your whole life and ate them? Or did it start at one point in time? Is it genetic? Is it something that you're just born with? Or is this something that happened as a result of an injury or taking poor care of yourself or something like that? And there's a lot of questions that I get about this. So I wanted to talk about why I think that I've probably had it my whole life and what things made it really bad so that I got really sick, and what I'm doing now and kind of how I stumbled across it. Now, I do want to say I am not a doctor. If you have any kind of health issues, even if they're overlapping or the same kind of health issues as I do or did, talk to your doctor, find a dietitian, find an allergist, find a nutritionist, find a rabbi, find anybody else except me for advice. And the reason why I say that is because these symptoms can be part of many different illnesses and diseases. It is not just salicylates that cause this for people. In my case, it is almost all the time. So I just want to put that out there. The second thing is I am a researcher. I do have a degree in biology. I worked very hard at it, sometimes through illness, working toward that degree. And I am very picky when it comes to what is research and what is not research. Googling things online is not really research. When I'm talking about research articles on my website and other things, it's usually original research. People did science experiments and came out with results. And there's also like clinical research or like just practice. There are doctors and people that actually treat and take care of people, and they glean knowledge from how those patients react. And that is another type of research that is really valuable and also really valuable for the salicylate community. So I just want to put that out there. I want to first start off by talking about what salicylates are. They're a natural compound that's found in plants and made for a lot of different purposes. Usually it functions as like an insecticide or pesticide. You can usually find them on the outsides of plants. So like on a willow tree, it's located in the bark. And on berries, it's located on the outside of the fruit. On apples and pears, it's located mostly on the peel, although also inside too sometimes. It can function as a plant hormone that can signal blossoming or ripening, and it's pretty much in almost all the plants. We also synthetically make salicylates, so it's used for cosmetics and for perfumes, and sometimes used in cleaners. And it makes it really challenging because if somebody is sensitive to salicylates, it can greatly affect what they can eat, but it also affects, for many, what they inhale or what they put on their skin. And they're really common, and sometimes they're really popular natural medicines or kind of home remedies. So some of the more popular and hard to run from is aloe, almond, coconut, avocado oils, all those good for you fats. Those are all very high in salicylates, and it's just really hard to find cosmetics or food without them. Now, some people can only be affected by eating it, and other people it will include inhalants and different things. So it's really hard to imagine that you can be allergic to so many things that are healthy for you. For my fruits and veggies list, I eat maybe 10 fruits and veggies, if you count chocolate and decaf coffee as fruits. So as a kid, I was pretty picky and I had issues with food. My mom had issues with food when she was pregnant with me. When I was an infant, I couldn't do any of those first starter foods. I would get really sick from doing them, from eating them. And I actually lost weight between like my first and second year because I just wasn't eating anything. As a kid, like age 4 to about 12, I was really picky with a lot of spicy foods. I hated pizza. It was like the worst thing ever to go to a birthday party and to have pizza served. And, hindsight, the tomatoes and the spicy meats on them was like the worst thing ever. And they are quite high in salicylates. I did well with a lot of tropical fruits, and I did eat a lot of fruit, lots of vegetables. But I had nightmares as a kid like crazy, which I have now linked up with salicylates. And I just had, that affected me so much as a kid. And, I just really didn't enjoy eating food. So Beanpole was one of my nicknames in 5th grade, I remember. Fast forward to the end of my high school, I ended up being really sick in high school. My last 2 years, I was so sick. I actually stopped swimming my junior and senior year, and the main things that I had was just chronic fatigue, and I ended up also having a lot of issues with migraines. That's when my migraines started, and chronic stomach pain. I actually went to the emergency room because I ate a normal everyday Sarah meal and a coffee. I remember having a coffee that day with like 3 shots. My junior year, I was at work and I ended up having horrible stomach pains that evening, and I had to go to the ER. I ended up getting, all the girl physical exam and everything, and basically they told me at the end of the day that it was probably just gas. And I doubted that for a very long time. It's really challenging to eat something and get chronically sick afterward and then just be like, oh, it's just some normal stomach stuff. And I couldn't lay down, I couldn't sit down, I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand. I was so sick. So anyway, fast forward a few years. In my early 20s, I was sick. I had issues all the time with allergies. I lost my voice. I remember I moved to California. I had laryngitis for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I was starting a new store. I worked for Starbucks, and it was like, I'm not sick, it's just allergies or something. Like, I just don't have a voice. And I remember trying to call out drinks like, grande latte, So that was, a really awkward thing that happened to me. And during that time, I was eating really healthy. I was eating like a lot of whole wheat products, and but I had chronic pain. I had a lot of migraines. I had a lot of shoulder and back pain just for so long, and it was so frustrating. In my mid-20s, something crazy happened, and I ended up going to Costa Rica and Panama, and I came back super sick. For about a year and a half, I had migraines like 4 times a week. I had stomach, butt problems, like you name it, lots of problems. I ended up getting diagnosed with Helicobacter pylori, which was, it's a bacteria that colonizes your esophagus and sometimes your intestines. And so I had to go through 2 really intense antibiotic treatments during that time. It was thought that I had maybe another parasite that I didn't get treated for. So the second time around, I ended up doing antiparasitic medicine. And after that, I just really was never the same. Hindsight, though, my living conditions was kind of crazy. So I went through a really stressful period of time, and everybody, my GI, my allergist, my primary care physician, they were all like, it's probably just stress. And I doubted that. I never believed them. I got diagnosed with IBS, I got diagnosed with IBS and then diagnosed with Helicobacter and then diagnosed with IBS like 6 months later and then diagnosed with Helicobacter again and then treated for that parasite. And then again, like a year later, got diagnosed with IBS. And it's like, when I follow the IBS diet, I don't feel better, I feel worse. And I don't think it's IBS. So I continued to go along. During that time, I actually cut out gluten. I did a lot of like detox diets and elimination diets, trying to work with, trying to figure out what I was sensitive to. I remember doing an elimination diet. I ended up eliminating like dairy and gluten, and my migraines went away, and so I was starting to feel better. But I was still having a lot of stomach problems, still having a lot of fatigue, and it wasn't solving all my problems. I remember eating like kale like 2 or 3 times a day, and with brown rice and fish, and just a lot of fruits and vegetables. And it's like, what was I doing to myself? I was making myself chronically sicker. Also during that time, my housemate used fabric softeners and air fresheners and like so many fragrances. There were air fresheners in the car, there were air fresheners in the house. There was perfume and fragrance lotions, and during that time I was so sick, and I was having my nightmares as a child. They were coming back. I was having nightmares and night terrors like every night for like 6 months. 6 months. It was horrible. So anyway, that was lovely. So that was probably the sickest I've ever been, was in my mid-20s. And after that, I moved and I changed housemates, and things got a little bit better. I was working on my degree, my BS in biology, and I ended up moving in with my folks. My mom was going through cancer, my dad had Parkinson's, and so I just felt like it was a really good time to move in with them. And so, they don't use a lot of chemicals, and so moving back in with them was a little bit better. My mom and we went through a phase with like green smoothies and with fruits and veggies, and we were going to be so healthy. And we weren't. I was so sick. During that time, I got into a car accident, and I started going through just chronic pain. I should back up. In my mid-20s, I also started a very special condition called dystonia, which is a muscular condition, and it is debilitating. It is a horrible illness, condition, disease, whatever it is. And I started when I was about 26. It took me 2 years to get a diagnosis. I was told it was stress. I was told it was idiopathic. I was basically told it was in my head. It was so debilitating that if I did not take medicine, I could not drive. The biggest symptom that I had was that it would close my eyes like this, and I can't open them again, and it make my jaw clench, and I still have it. It just is in remission now. And when I was about 28, I got a diagnosis from a neurologist, finally. Thank you, Dr. Lou, wherever you are. She not only gave me a diagnosis, but I got a treatment, and it's a Levodopa-Responsive Dystonia. From what I read, it's genetic, but there is somebody in my family that has it, but at the time I didn't know. So it was just really frustrating to have this disease that I could not control. And so she did end up prescribing me a medicine. I took Levodopa, which is what my dad took for Parkinson's. And so, I took that for quite a few years. I did find it in a natural form in velvet bean. I think it's called Mucuna pruriens. And I took that for about 4 years. and it was a plant, and it did give me relief of my symptoms so that I could at least drive and function and write and type and do all those things. When I got into my car accident about 6 years ago, I ended up going through a lot of treatment for back pain, and so I ended up getting, taking ibuprofen or Aleve. I went and had massages, and they used coconut oil on my body, or like different oils on my body, or icy hot type patches, tiger balm, things like that. I ended up going and having acupuncture, and they would use willow bark on me. I would get sick after acupuncture, and I'd ask if that was a normal response to feel a little bit nauseous and like completely wiped out the day after. And they told me no, and I continued to do them a little bit, less often. I didn't have relief from the acupuncture, but they were using willow bark, which has salicylates. It's like one of the purest forms in its natural state. It was high in salicylates. So throughout these treatments, it was actually making me sicker because I was sensitive to salicylates. I didn't know it, and my recovery from my car accident was drawn out for about 4.5 years, 5 years before I realized, hey, I'm allergic to salicylates. During that time, in the last 10 years, I ended up going to a lot of allergists. I went to food allergists over and over and over again. One time, about 3 years ago, I ended up having an anaphylactic reaction, and it was related to the car accident a little bit. I woke up and I was in so much pain. And so I took 2 Aleve. I went and sat in a class. I had 3 hours of lectures that day. I called my massage therapist and said, I am really having a hard time. Can I get a massage today? And if possible, can I do an 1.5 hour long massage? And it worked out. So they called me in the middle of my class, or text me or something. I ended up leaving about an hour into my day. So I'd already taken 2 Aleve, and then I went and had my massage 1.5 hours, including icy hot. And then I ended up going next door because I was so wiped out by this time. I was so hungry, and at this time I had realized I'm not really sensitive to wheat, so I was kind of weaning out of my gluten-free phase. And so I went to the Chinese restaurant next door and had a really low gluten Chinese meal. I think I had broccoli beef with brown rice. Nothing too fancy, but it had broccoli and lots of chilies in it, because at the time I thought I could eat chilies. On the way back from the restaurant, I had at this point been really, really, really overloaded with salicylates. I ended up having a reaction. My mouth swelled up, my throat started to close. I was driving and I was alone, and it was a horrible feeling. And I, after that, did so many allergy tests. We tested everything under the sun for protein allergies in that meal and that I had that day, and I did not pop a single protein allergy for any of that stuff. And so, at that point, my allergist said, you might have had dust mites in your food, which I know you're allergic to, so maybe you just had oral mite syndrome, which is really disgusting. You should look that up. I'll put the link down. So basically, I was at a loss. I almost died, and I don't know what almost killed me. And, it's pretty much a terrible feeling. So how did I find out what I was allergic to? I decided that I would try a ketogenic diet. And my mom has done keto for quite a few years. She's lost maybe 80 or 90 pounds. She's doing really well on it. I highly recommend it for a lot of people. And I decided to try it. So this was about 3 years ago. And I felt good. I knew I was still sick and still struggling with foods. I thought maybe it was grains because obviously I had some issues with wheat and different, different grains. And during that time, I also found out that I'm not actually allergic to wheat or gluten sensitive or anything like that. I'm actually really sensitive to folic acid and vitamins added to wheat products. And sometimes they're added to rice and sometimes to corn. And that's what I found out I was really, really allergic to. So I ended up taking those out. Once I did that, I did not have a migraine for an entire year. And actually, it's been about 3 years since I've had a food-related migraine. So that was just amazing. So if you are getting migraines, take out your vitamin Bs or learn a lot about them and figure out which kind you can use. So I went on keto and I felt good. I had a lot of energy, but something was wrong. And I ended up in the walk-in clinic with heart palpitations and hot flashes. Now, I'm in my 30s. I'm healthy, right? At this point, somewhat healthy. Why would I be having hot flashes? Am I premenopausal? Like I had already had my hormones checked, but I did ask the doctor to check again because I know that they can cause heart palpitations too sometimes. And so we couldn't figure out what was going on. And what hindsight I realize now is that all the green veggies and the avocado oil I was putting on my salads and all the coconut and almond and all those healthy for you bell peppers and everything, I ended up getting so sick from that and they were causing heart palpitations and hot flashes. Now I know that if I get a hot flash that I probably had salicylates in my food and that it really wasn't as clean for me as it was. So that was keto, but I didn't know that at the time. So then I am, reading, watching these videos and listening to people about how dairy isn't very good for women on keto, and that can be the breakthrough is to remove dairy and then they'll lose weight and feel better and have more energy and not have, eczema and all these things. Wrong. Not for me. That was my tipping point for me. So I ended up having I removed dairy. I was still doing keto and I was still having symptoms. But what ended up happening was I replaced my dairy with almond and coconut milks and my butter with oil, and I ended up just eating a ton more salicylates. The final meal that pushed me over the edge was a cob of corn with olive oil and watermelon. And all of those are like moderate to high salicylates. The olive oil is debatable. It used to be in the really very high category and now it's on like the low no category. So I'm not even ready to like experiment with olive oil, but that was the meal that pushed me over the top. And since nobody's really allergic to olive oil, it is very, 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 very rare to have an olive oil allergy. I've already eaten watermelon and corn regularly. I thought that maybe it wasn't an allergy, but salicylates kept coming up for olive oil. And so I thought, everything on this list, I've had reactions with apples, peppers, there's so many things that I had issues with on that list that I decided to give it a try. 3 days into a not very good low-salicylate diet, there's a learning curve. 3 days in to going low-sal, I felt amazing. Every day more that I gave my body a break and removed all those foods that I was eating on a regular basis was amazing. Within a week, my muscles in my back that had been terribly, terribly, just knotted up and painful from the car accident for about 5 years, completely relaxed. My massage therapist was astounded. could not believe how relaxed my muscles were in my back. I had been cautious and worried about taking my levodopa medicine for my my muscle disorder, and because it was plant-based. So I had made a doctor's appointment to try and get the lab synthetic version so that it'd be really pure. And it took a few weeks to get that going. So I had a lapse in medicine, and I realized that my dystonia had actually gone into remission. I still have it, just a little tiny bit, but I do not need to treat it. I do have muscle spasms when I eat salicylates, so I know it's still there, and I know that there's some kind of a threshold for it, but I am not in pain. I can open my eyes. I can hold a pencil for more than a few minutes. It's just been amazing. So my dystonia is in remission, and there's so many other symptoms: chronic fatigue, stomach problems, migraines, migraines and headaches. I get headaches if I have salicylates. Those are in remission. I just feel so much better. And the reason why I want to do this video and make this website, low-sal-life.com, and spend my time talking to you is because I wish somebody would have told me about this like 20 years ago, or that told my parents, like, hey, if your kid's having nightmares, maybe it's the apple juice that they had right before bedtime. Or, you know, if you have dystonia, give it a try. It may or may not work. And if you have ringing in your ears, oh my gosh, I've had tinnitus and so sensitive to stimulus, like creepy crawly skin, loud noises, too much, highly sensitive person, too much going on, that is calm down so much, dialed down. So I'm not bothered by it. And to find out that a lot of kids with hyperactivity or ADHD or autism can respond really well to a low-salicylate diet, like, it's just so amazing. Like, give it a try. So that's what I got. For medical issues, we look at what can I take to fix this headache. What can I do to fix this pain? Like, what can I take? What can I eat? That'll, superfoods is all about, like, if you want, like, no bladder infections, like, eat cranberry, right? That's an additive treatment. Think about what can you do that's a subtractive treatment. If you want healthy lungs, don't smoke. If you want a healthy pancreas and liver, don't eat so much sugar. If you want, to not be in pain and have these weird allergy type reactions and tired all the time, maybe try a low-salicylate diet. There are other chemicals besides just salicylates. There's amines and sulfites and other foods. So there are resources available about how to test for those. For me, I just saw the list and knew right away that I've had issues with all of these foods. So that was pretty easy for me to pick out and try it. If you're still here, I'd be surprised, but you are not alone. And if you think that, if you've been told that your symptoms are in your head or without a cause, or that there is no treatment, you are not alone. There's others that have been like that. Now, listen to your body is a bunch of crap sometimes, because the body doesn't tell you, it doesn't write things up on the wall or in lipstick on the mirror, or, it doesn't really tell you what it needs. But if you are methodical about how you test new foods, or how you eliminate foods, you can get a pretty good idea about what you're sensitive to. I do want to say that the only way to really test for salicylate sensitivity is with an elimination diet. Now, like I said, all of these symptoms can be caused by other things. I went through lots of doctor's appointments. I know, that my symptoms aren't caused from a nutritional deficiency, or that they're not a true allergy. Like, I'm not really allergic to peppers, but I can't eat them because I get an allergic type reaction. So there's a big difference between that. So I know what I'm not allergic to. The only way to test is with an elimination diet. That's all you have to do, is just stop eating a few foods. You know, eat some meat, get some tofu, eat your rice and beans. You know, that's all you have to do. And you can test it yourself. You don't need to go to a doctor. You know, right now it's not like the best time to like leave your house. So, you know, just eat some rice and beans. Beware the lurking variable. So, you know, there's some arguing about, there's not a lot of support in the US for salicylate sensitivity or intolerance. And like there wasn't a lot of support for gluten sensitivity 15 years ago when I started, we know a lot more about gluten sensitivity because people said, hey, not eating gluten works for me. I don't know why, but I feel better. And even if it doesn't fit into your celiac model, there is something going on with gluten sensitivity. And now we know that there's like 11 or 12 subproteins in gluten that can cause lots of different symptoms. We didn't know that before. And, you know, for a lot of people, that's really great. The research ended up catching up. For me, when I went gluten-free, because it fixed my migraines. I was hoping to fix my stomach problems and the chronic fatigue and all the other problems, but it didn't. But I did get rid of my migraines. And the reason why, it was because of the lurking variable. I didn't know that I was also eliminating vitamins. So just think about that when we're talking about salicylates. It might not really be salicylates. It might be a different compound that's in all of these foods. But for now, the diet works, the foods that I'm sticking with works, and if I feel better, why would I want to change that? So I just want to put that out. We don't always know what's going on. Science is rapidly changing because we get new information, and so we just got to go with that. We got to know that what works now works, and you know, we'll fine tune what's really going on in another 15, 20 years. The last thing I want to say is I am working on a website. It is not very so it's kind of the bones. Please visit it. It's low-sal-life.com, and on there I am going to be filling out what I want is a good place for recipes, a good place for lists of what foods we can eat, and then also a good list of foods and products that we can buy rated by other people. So I am working on building that out. I love it. It makes me really happy. I use it as a resource because I can't remember what all the foods are listed at. I do want to invite you to my next video, which is going to be which lists to use. There are a lot of lists online, and if you're feeling inspired and you want to start, check out my website, because what I've done is taking the original research articles and listed them by their actual amounts. They're not like some of these other columns that have like low, high, very high columns and then don't put a date on there. Remember, science can change. We get new information. Our food system changes all the time. The oldest research article is about 45 years old, and our newest is from 2017. Not to mention there's also the clinical practice. RPA, Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, they have some lists and some books that are really helpful too. So with that said, please check out my website, pull off the lists off there. You'll have a much easier learning curve than I did. It took me about 4 or 5 months to figure out what I was really sensitive to, and those lists weren't perfect for me. I had reactions on stuff that was in the low category, which later in 2017, which I didn't know about in that article, those have also been classified a little bit higher. So it's not easy, but ultimately it is easier when you are feeling better. And I just want to encourage you and thank you for sitting here and listening. And I will not do another really long video talk about myself video like this again, but I thought I'd introduce myself and let you guys know what's going on. So please leave your comments down below if you have started a low salicylate diet, what your experience was, and maybe what some of your favorite resources were. Thank you so much. And that's it. See you next week. Bye.